they never were divorced, but they, weren't living together because of his work, and he couldn't bring us there because he wasn't bringing in enough money to support all of us in a home or any kind. So he left us where we were in Omaha, and when he got back to, he was in Hastings, Nebraska for a while, and one other town, I can't remember what, and he finally landed in Grand Island, which was a little closer to Omaha, I think, than some of the others. And it was about then that he decided he would bring us back to make a home, I guess. So my mother and my sister went back to be with Dad again, and they lived in back of the tailor shop. He lived in it was downtown office, or not office, but a store, and up on the second floor of the store. And so my mother and sister went there, and they lived in the rooms in back of the tailor shop. And so I was in high school then, and I didn't want, it was right in the middle of my term, and I didn't want to go with them at all. And my girlfriend that I knew had made good friends with, she asked her mother if I could come live with them until I finished the term. And her mother agreed, because her father was a traveling salesman, and so he wasn't home. And so I stayed there, and my dad tried to give her $10 a month for keeping me there, which wasn't much in those days, but it was something. And it was all he could give, really. And so I lived with her for a while. So then when I started back to school, and then when I went to Grand Island to be with my folks for the summer, I came back to go to school again. And I don't think her mother thought she could afford to have me around anymore, because, she needed more money than that to help out, because they weren't very well off either. And so this, as I could say, my life is so disconnected. This girl at school that I knew just at school, I didn't know her otherwise, said, well, come live with us. My dad and she had lost her mother, and her dad and her brother, younger brother. And she said, come help me with them. She said, it's all right with my dad. And I guess he must have agreed. And so I went and lived with them for a couple of months or 3 months, something, so I could finish, go to school. And I lived with them until her dad decided he thought I was good for something else besides just living there. And it frightened me. I didn't like his actions. And I was walking to school one day, because they lived in South Omaha, and that was quite a ways from Omaha Tech. And I had to walk there, or once in a while when my dad would send me $1 so I'd have car fare to ride to school, the streetcar. But there were times when I had to walk all the way, which was a long way. And I was walking along trying to go to school, and I felt bad, and I guess I looked like I was crying, because I probably was. And this cab driver stopped and said, is there something I can help with? And it turned out that he was a man who lived in one of just a couple of doors from where I lived when I was still younger, when I was a kid. And the house in between his house and my house and this girl, he finally married her. And of course I knew her because she was friends with my mother, and Mother liked her very much. And so he took me home. Now, he's a cab driver. He didn't have much money either. It shows how big-hearted some people are. And Doll, her name was Doll, had a baby. And so I came to her. They lived in just a housekeeping room of one room and a kitchen. And they kept me there until I finished that part of my high school. It was, now, only he worked nights with his cab. He would come home during the day and get in bed. I would be getting up to go to school out of that same bed. We all three shared that bed. So it wasn't really a teenager's life at all, but it was all I had, and they were good enough to let me stay there with them, which I'll always feel blessed. Now,
at this point, your mom had Marion and had gone to reconnect with your dad, or what happened?
Yeah, they were in Grand Island.
Okay.
See, I was kind of adamant. I wanted to finish school where I was, and these were the helpful things that I got along the way. I think God was watching over me all the time. I never would have been able to manage. So I always feel blessed because of that, because I think He was taking care of me all the time I was bunking around that way. So I stayed with them, and when at the end of my school there, for the summer, I took care of her little girl while she got a job. So she worked until I went back to school in September, because I was graduating in December is what was going on. And so I went back to school, and of course she quit her job because she didn't have anybody to take care of her child. So I stayed with them, and they were great movers too. So I was in one place and another all the time. We never lived very long in one spot. I've been very movable all my life, young life.